Welcome back to Wyandot Lake and episode 18 of our Planet Coaster 2 water park. In our last episode, we finished off the boardwalk, our second themed area of the four that we will have at park opening, not including our entry plaza, of course. It is also one of our smallest in terms of space. Today we are going to be working on laying out some of the basic pathways, doing the basic design of a pool area, adding some terraforming, and of course, building our first two buildings in this area. I've sketched and designed a lot of themed areas over the years for fun, but I do have to say, I think that this one might be one of my favorites. If it's not my favorite, definitely within the top two or three that I've kind of sketched out over the years. So at the time that I started recording this, and even now, I am still kind of flushing out the specifics in terms of the themes and exactly what everything is going to look like. But I can say that what I've done so far, which is definitely a little more than we'll see in this episode, everything is coming together super well. It's super coherent, works really well together, and it just looks awesome. Within this area, there's going to be a few different things. We're going to have a hot tub area, which is what we're working on right now. And we actually end up coming in and kind of completely changing this whole area because, as you can see, they are hexagons that we're trying to turn into circles. But when they ended up coming out with the update with the circle stamps, which was after I started working on this, we go in and we kind of change that out and actually makes it so much better. So that's going to change a little bit. But this is the hot tub area. We also are going to have a private pool area with cabanas and a very, very small slide. When I say a very small slide, what I mean by that is like 10 feet tall, if that. And I think there's two, maybe three slides within that platform, but super simple, super small. We're also going to have a wave pool that is going to be kind of themed to a cove. That is going to be coming out here in episode 20, which I just finished writing up all my notes for that. So super excited for that, of course. We're going to have kind of a smaller wading pool kind of in the back of this area. We're going to have two distinct QSR locations as well as two distinct retail locations. Most of the complex is going to have back-of-house roads, and it is going to be the most complex back-of-house roads of any area we've done so far. I think there are 3-4 different paths and different networks of roads to kind of get to the back areas versus just one centralized back area like we've seen up to this point. There's also going to be a really cool centerpiece in a plaza with some space around it that is perfect for expansion. I think I've got 2 or 3 things written down already for what we could put into there. On top of that, we also are going to have our largest and most ambitious slide complex to date. I am thinking maybe 6 slides. Might even try to get some varying heights in there, but I think the most we've done so far is we got 2 slides with 3, and then our mat racers, which has I think 4 or 5 over there, which we finished up in the last couple episodes. But this is going to have 6. It's going to be big, a lot of elements. Super excited for that. I am still working on planning that out, even as I record the audio for this episode. So, if you have any ideas, any elements you want to see, themes you want to see that kind of fit in with the tiki theme of the area, drop those below because I am still working on planning it out. So, that's kind of the gist for the land. It was planned out over a 40-minute period. I was actually substitute teaching last spring, and I had a planning period, first period, and pulled out a piece of scrap paper and sketched it all out. And it has been a ton of fun to build, see it evolve, and everything has kind of developed its own storyline, which we'll see here over the next 3 or 4 episodes as we go through this area, but super thrilled with it. So we already talked about the hot tubs a little bit. So we're going to move on to that. Don't need to worry about what gets done there because we're actually going to come back in episode 21 and completely redo the hot tub area minus this building you are seeing right now. But we'll go ahead and get into this building. It is the first retail location of the area. So you're going to have in there a retail location and 2 QSRs, one for drink, one for food. I will be completely honest, it was not supposed to have merch. When I was building out the area, I went to place these the generators and the water filters like you just saw here a second ago. And I was like, why don't I have this marked on the sheet? Why can I not find this? Well, the reason I couldn't find it is because it was supposed to go in this building. So the center item, which is retail, was actually supposed to be mechanical. We're going to leave it as retail. We'll keep an eye on it. I know in Planet Coaster 1, people didn't necessarily go back to areas that were straight off the path, or not straight off the path, but that were kind of set back from the path a little bit. And even though we have the pools here, there's not a ton back here. And so if it's not getting a ton of business, we can go ahead, come in and change that out, put the mechanical in there, kind of change things around. But we'll see how it goes. One of the things you are going to see with this is you are going to see a lot of the thatched roof, a lot of that bamboo. And you can see here the first of our kind of network of paths. So we're going to have 3 or 4 entrances from kind of that back area into different things. But you're going to see a lot of that bamboo, a lot of that thatched roof. It is a little repetitive, but what I have found is by changing up the color and adding some decorations in, you can do a good job at kind of making it not feel repetitive. So we're going to really focus on that. Should be really good. We'll kind of see how that goes. We're going to hop over here real quick. We're going to lay out the framework for these 2 buildings. And on the right side is going to be stores and guest service, right on the right side of your screen there. And then the other side is going to be our kind of guest enhancement areas, as we call them. We've got our bathroom, we've got our changing room, and of course we've got our dryer. And you can already see where we are kind of changing up the design look, which when we add in decorations will really make it so that it does not feel as repetitive, I should say, as some of the other areas. And you can see we're already kind of doing that right there. Ideally, this area is a loop. And the reason we have our stores on the right side and our other stuff on the left side is because most people will enter here rather than further up, and they will traverse through the path, and most people are right-sided. We're also trained, at least here in the United States, I don't know about overseas, because I know you guys drive on the opposite side of the road, but at least here we are trained to walk on the right side. And so you're going to see those more. So you want, and this is just a general design principle in general, but you want to have on the right side all of your money-making stuff. That's why when you go through a theme park, when you first walk in the morning and then you leave at night, the stores as you leave are on the right side as you leave, so that you see those as you leave. So it's kind of the same thing here, a little bit different because some of the stuff that is here is stuff that you are going to want during the day while you're in the pool, right? It's your sunscreen, it's your floaties, right? Your bathing suits. So that is why I'm okay with having it on the right side here and kind of breaking out of that normal pattern that we would see otherwise. There are also a couple billboards that we are going to put in here. You'll see the one right here now. If you have any ideas, let me know. I really am struggling with what to put on billboards within the park. So if you have any suggestions or anything, let me know. But we are going to go back to working on the QSR location here and adding some decorations to really break it up, right? As I said earlier, working in moderation with the bamboo is really important, right? So we're going to add in these little oars. We're going to add in, I believe we do the seesaws. Actually, we might even swap these out. I can't remember. I think we leave this because it is retail. But then we do kind of like little wooden signs that kind of really adhere to the theme in here and really just kind of try to break it up. And I actually think if I took all the buildings in this land that we've done and we lined them all up, they would look very different, which is really what we are trying to go for. I do need names for these areas. If you have any recommendations, drop them below. Certainly, that is something that, with the exception of really one of our pools, I have really struggled with this area, right? I don't have a name for the area yet. I don't have a name for a lot of these stores. So if you have any ideas or anything like that, just let me know below. Coming back to this store here, I really like the wood look. That is something you're going to see us do a lot to kind of break it up, is adding in a lot of these different kind of Viking pieces, these wooden resort pieces. It's just really going to help break it up, help mix everything together. And the lighting especially also is something that's really going to be a focal point for this area. So what you're going to see here is we're going to add some string lights, and we're actually going to change where they're positioned, but we're going to really work on lighting. And one of the things I will say I'm not happy with is I feel like, sorry, I accidentally muted my mic there for a second. I feel like we do kind of a harsh white light with a lot of this area in some places. And I also feel like we do these tiki lights, and like those tiki lights we just placed, all of those are going to go away in a couple episodes because I think the tiki looks good, but you add in the realism fact of there's going to be a lot of foliage here and a lot of people running around and you risk fire and it's just, nah. But we are going to use the string lights extensively. What we do here, and I think this looks really cool, is we're going to place some posts with the lights. And we're going to kind of give off this defined area for waiting in line. The poles I'm not super crazy about, but for right now it works until we change. I do feel like it maybe overcrowds the space a little bit, but it's really going to add in some just really good kind of interesting look to this area. I ended up not putting a roof on. You could see me kind of messing around there a little bit. It just didn't work. It felt like it made it too crowded. If I can figure out the right way to do one, I'm certainly open to it. I certainly would love to. But for right now, it's just not something we're going to stick with. And then, like I said earlier, these torches, they're going in right now. I spend a lot of time working on them. But once we start adding foliage and everything in, I am kind of like, yeah, not really a fan. Let's get rid of them, and we move on from it. So moving on to kind of the entire park as an area, you can see we kind of add in some seating areas. We'll add in some tables and stuff here to kind of pull this together. But I do have some concerns starting to form about the park as a whole. The biggest is the money. As it sits right now, we have gone through close to, I think it's like 500 some or 400 some $1,000 of our $1 million budget, which doesn't sound like a lot, but our center island area is going to be incredibly expensive because we are going to build a massive lazy river, 8 to 10 slides, at least, different pools, a lot of buildings. It's almost going to be like it's a water park within itself. And that's going to cost a lot of money. So I wouldn't stress about it too much, except for, as I've said numerous times throughout this area, I hate when you have parks in this game and you just look out and you just see nothing. Right? There's no fence. There's nothing in the distance. It's just the park and then flat green space for as far as you can see. So one of the things that we are going to do is before we open the park, we are going to go through and add foliage to the entire unused map. And we'll add some elevation changes in there as well, which will also, it'll do a couple things. But we're going to do that. And I do worry that that's going to get really expensive. And what's going to happen is we are not going to have the money to complete all of that and do this. I messed around just for fun. And I think in order to do the entire thing, it was like $300,000. So we are starting to run a little tight. If we have to get a loan, that is completely fine. I honestly don't know of any park anywhere in the world that would be able to completely open debt-free. I'm sure even Disney takes out loans of some type when they build their park. Same thing with Universal. So I think it'll just add that realism element that we want as we kind of go through and run this park. But that is something that is going to change moving forward. And I shouldn't say change so much as something that I am expecting as we kind of push forward through here. I also do think the elevation changes and the foliage will be really cool as we expand the park. I've talked about early in the series, we are going to add a dry park eventually. And by having kind of that random foliage and random kind of elevation changes, I think that's going to help give a really kind of more natural feel as we go through and we build out the dry park. Because the reality is parks are not flat. Our parks right now are very flat. And with the exception of this area, which is the first area to kind of have some of that. So I do think we're going to go through. We're going to make those changes right at the end, right before we open the park. It's going to look super great. Back to what's going on screen, though, because we don't need to worry about that for a little while. Let's keep working on this retail store here. And you can see, like, already you can barely even see the bamboo usage. And we're also going to add a bunch of stuff with the roofs, and it's really going to kind of differentiate it, kind of make it that unique look that everything is going to have. This will be the first of 2 dedicated retail stores in the land when the park opens. I still do need a name for the 2 stores. Guest Services, obviously, is just called Guest Services. But it'll have those 3 vendor stations in there. So if you have any ideas, please let me know down below. Without question, one of the 2 retail locations in this area is going to be turned into a walk-in store at some point. It is likely going to be in the first or second off season. And I will say it is likely going to be the other retail location. I just think looking at the 2 buildings, the other one was built a little more for that opportunity. And so I do think it is the one that's going to take that. But we did do an extended roof over here, which is part of why I don't think it necessarily would work as a straight walk-in store. But we did an extended roof, which is going to help with shade so that our guests in line do not melt away, do not get sunburned. It's also going to help us create a touch point, which we're going to talk about here in a little bit, and obviously gives a little bit of a different look to the front of the building compared to everything else. I also am going to add in this really cool sign, which I don't think really would work had we done a flat look on the front. So I do think it works really well. We also are going to change the colors out, or I guess we kind of already have. We did a little bit more there. But this is one of those buildings where coloring is massive. And we did a little bit more of a muted color, which I think works really well because it's going to really blend into the area. On the other side of the path where we have the bathroom and everything, you're going to see we put in a lot of foliage, and it hides that building a little bit, but it darkens up the space. And so by having kind of these darker colors here on a building that is going to be much more visible, much more exposed, it helps it just kind of fit the area versus some of the colors that naturally kind of came into the game with it. I also do think a tiki theme, at least in my mind, is a little bit more shaded and a little bit of a darker kind of color. And obviously the pathway is going to have a lot of sun, a lot of light, a lot more than maybe a traditional kind of tiki would have with kind of that very narrow pathways with just kind of some sunlight poking through the trees. That's just not possible when it comes to guest flow. And so this does a good job at kind of hiding this as well. Now, I talked a minute ago about touch points, and that is what we are working on right here. I call them Easter Island statues because that's what they remind me of. I know they're called, I believe, just something statue. I can't read it on the screen there. But we're going to add in these little statues. And if you've ever been to King's Dominion, you've seen the mushrooms. And that was kind of my inspiration with these. So we're going to put some lights in. And what I want to do eventually is I want to come back here and I want to use the moving platforms that are in the game and use it along with the lights, put a speaker in, and create like a little show, right? I mean, look how cool that looks, right? You could light it up, make it so like different people were pretending to sing different pieces, and just I think be a really cool touch point, something that guests would walk by, and 80% of guests might walk by without even noticing and go, whatever. But 10% of guests or 20% of guests would stop and go, oh my gosh, that's so cool. And we'll just have a really cool opportunity there. So we are not going to do it right now just for time reasons. And when we do it, we'll probably save it as a blueprint in a different file and then import it in. Just makes it a little easier timing-wise to do that. I did think about doing bubbles and having bubbles kind of come out of their mouths. I actually thought it was going to be a really cool idea. Unfortunately, the bubble machine in the game, and maybe it's changed, and if it has, this is something that will go back and change, but you can't scale it. And so, unfortunately, because of that, it just stuck out weirdly out of their mouths, and I just didn't like the look of it, and so that is why we did not end up going with that. But we're going to do something with these, and it's going to look fantastic. I am super excited about it. If you have any other ideas for touch points, let me know. I want to start focusing a little more on them. It's kind of one of the core things about a design that I want, but I do feel like I maybe haven't done as good of a job with that as I want. So that's something that I want to focus on as we finish out the build of this park and move forward with expansions over the year. And you'll see we certainly do a better job in this area of the park, but definitely room for improvement. The signs, thrilled with how they came out. And I think you're going to see the signage is starting to get a lot better as we go through this area. But I really kind of like this look. I don't know the technical name for them. I call them like Wrigley Field lights kind of style, but as a sign, just because that's kind of what they remind me of. But we put kind of these old school lights, which I've talked about how much I love those before, and I really do think they just are an incredibly versatile tool. But we also kind of go with a palette kind of looking sign, almost like they kind of took a couple 2x4s, threw them up there, and then threw a palette on well, and it just looks super great. So, and then we'll come back here to the back of house. Of course, we have to have our HVAC for our team members, make sure that they're comfortable during the day, and our dumpster. We really do want to make sure that we're doing as realistic of a space as we can. And obviously, that is something that is super important to get into these things. So we do blend in the colors a little bit. That's kind of a little preference thing of me. If you go backstage at a lot of parks, I think one of the things you will actually find is a lot of times they are just like concrete. They are CMUs, right? Just basic concrete blocks because guests can't see them. But I wanted to do something where if a guest were to get back there, it still looked like it themed, right? Obviously not as heavily as the front, but still just kind of fit that because I don't know. It just feels lazy otherwise. So that is about all we've got for this episode. Next week is going to be a really fun and full episode as we are going to get an absolute ton done with the area. We're going to finish laying out the entire area, which the only reason we didn't do it today is just because we wanted to focus on this to get the sizing right. We're going to place down a couple pools, lay down our little water slide, and we're going to complete 4 buildings. So going to be a ton of fun. If you are still here, please make sure to drop a like and subscribe. Leave a comment down below on what we should name some of these things. And enjoy the last few seconds here, and I will see you next time.